Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. I'm Steve Mundell. I'm Director of Product for Acquire. I'm joined this afternoon by Joe McCory, who's Business Development Analyst here in Canada. So today we're going to be going over some new data capture capabilities we're bringing to an upcoming release of GIM Suite. So with these new capabilities, field workers and geologists will be able to collect samples and field observations in remote, disconnected environments. So data capture is one of these core capabilities of geoscientific information management, and we're constantly getting feedback of the value of an integrated solution. So what happens when you break the link between the central system and the data capture solution is that you get a really big hit in performance as well as data quality. And that's due to the mismatch of the ways that rules are applied and validations and that sort of thing. So this is a really big focus for us. So as I mentioned, we're working on a new tool for mobile data capture. So it's a mobile app, and it's fully integrated with GIM Suite. It runs on Apple and Android phones, and it allows field workers and geologists to collect observations using simple forms with validations that are applied at the point of capture. Now, sample collection and field observations, it sort of fills a really big bucket in the mining industry, but today we're going to look at it as it's applied to the situation or the scenario of exploration surface sampling. And so when we're talking about surface sampling, just to be clear, it's what this guy here is doing. So taking rock samples, taking chip samples, or surface seam sediment samples, that sort of thing. Pretty much any scenario where you've got a sample, a location, and some sort of observations that you're associating with that sample. So the mobile app, it caters for any surface sampling scenario where you're starting in a fully connected environment. So you're starting within the office where you've got good connectivity with your servers, good connectivity with your databases, and then you're heading out into the field where you've got no connection whatsoever. So the extreme example of this is where you've got the exploration field camp. So you've got a field server and you've got field workers and geologists cycling in and out of the field camp and synchronizing their work on a day-to-day basis over the camp Wi-Fi or some other means. So you could also have the case where you've got geologists and field workers working out of a motel where they've got good connectivity back to the office, but then they're heading out into the field every day to do their work and then synchronizing their work once they get back from the field. So whatever the exact scenario, the offline data capture workflow for the app can be broken down into 3 simple steps. So first, when you're in the office, you've got good connectivity, and you synchronize the app with the server. And when you're doing that, you're downloading the forms, the things that you're going to enter data into, together with any associated data, or any data associated with the project. Next, you go out into the field where you're in a disconnected environment, so you've got no connection whatsoever with the server and you're collecting your samples and collecting your observations. At that point, all of the data has been stored locally on the mobile device until you come back into the office in stage 3, where you've got good connectivity again, and you synchronize your app with the server to transfer or to upload all of the data you've collected back into the corporate data set. So it's as simple as that. It's a pretty easy workflow to understand. You know, anyone can understand it. It's basically synchronized, go out and collect your observations, and then synchronize again. It's as easy as that. So what I'm going to do is just run over a few of the key capabilities of the app before we jump into a live demo. So firstly, it's a cross-platform mobile app which runs on Android and Apple devices. And so this addresses a couple of the major issues that we come across. The first is that you're not limited to Windows devices, so you don't need to spend a fortune on ruggedized laptops and ruggedized devices before you go out in the field. So now you have a range of relatively inexpensive devices at hand for the task. And secondly, the app can be installed and updated via simple and easy means through the app stores, through the relevant app stores. So you don't have the same overheads, you don't have all the overheads of deploying and maintaining the rollout of desktop applications to your tablets and to your laptops when you're going out in the field. So that's a pretty onerous sort of process, so you don't need to deal with that anymore. So So it's designed to work entirely in an offline environment with a simple and easy synchronization mechanism to transfer data to and from the server. So this solves one of the biggest headaches with offline mobile solutions, is how to synchronize the data that you've collected back with the central system, which often involves lots of processes around exports and imports and managing that process. So now this is replaced by the user simply pressing one button on the mobile app to synchronize the data and transfer it with the central source. So that's a lot simpler and easier. An additional benefit of the synchronized process is that it provides an easy means to deploy updates to the user's offline workspace. So not only when you synchronize the app with the server, not only does it synchronize the data, but it synchronizes any changes to the user's offline workspace. So for example, if you're adding new tasks for the geologist or field worker to do, or you've made changes to any of the tasks that they're doing, such as additional fields or additional validations or QC insertions, those things will be updated the next time the user synchronizes the app with the server. So an example might be at the start of a campaign is that you're doing sediment samples, and then as the campaign progresses, you might start to move on to rock chip sampling. And so when that task is added into the workspace, the user synchronizes the app with the server, and then that new task will appear, and they can go on and use it to continue with the campaign. So finally, it's an app that's fully integrated with GIM Suite. So people often look to fill the gap of mobile data capture with third-party apps or custom in-house solutions. So a common issue that this brings up is the need to try and synchronize that data from the third-party app back into GIM Suite so it's all managed centrally. And to do that requires lots of import processes and other things to try and integrate and manage that process. So the advantage of the mobile app over the third-party applications is that it's fully integrated with GIM Suite. And so firstly, this means that there's no chance of any mismatches in the ways that rules are applied, because you're not having to reproduce or replicate the same rules on a third-party system where you can forget to do something or miscode it along the way. And secondly, the user can just synchronize the app with GIM Suite, and they're done. You just press a button and it's synchronized. There's no need for any complex import or export processes to get the data back and forth between GIM Suite and the mobile device. So it's just eliminating the need for you to manage multiple systems to do your data capture, and so you're going to see an improvement in productivity as well as a big improvement in your data quality. So now what we'd like to do is hand across to Joe for a live demonstration so you can see this in action. There's a lot more features as part of the mobile app, and Joe will go through those now.
So I'll carry on, and as Stephen introduced, we're going mobile. So what I've got here is the actual demo of the GIM Suite, the mobile platform, the mobile app that Steve just introduced there. So I guess the journey that I want us to go is we want to go stream sampling. I'll take on dual roles. I'll start off as a database administrator, designing the tasks that are going to be used out offline, and then show you, as a geologist, I've got to pick up a few samples, the whole process, syncing it all to a mobile device, collecting a handful of samples, and then coming back online. So to quickly start off, I've brought up the Arena interface where all the design happens. So the design here is you're creating tasks and you're defining the tasks, including the fields and the different requirements, which obviously have the validation rules and requirements to QC your data as you're collecting them. And the interface that we'll have designed here will be the one that would obviously be used to drive the sample capture offline, and then sync back online once you're back onto your network, or once you want to synchronize it back to your database. So just to quickly start us off, I'll just run through the basic workflow as I've kickstarted there. I'll go through showing the interface. I'll point out a few items which might require a few questions and answers. So we save some questions and when we can have a discussion. Okay, perfect. So I was talking about the tasks that we have online. We have, I guess, some viewing tasks here. I can click on view samples on a grid that will show me what's in the database right now. So if I can just scroll up and down. And I've got a bunch of samples, I guess 1,000 series, 2,000 series samples. That's what's already existing in the database there. And if I go back, we also have a map viewer. So you can actually see your samples in space. And you can click on them, filter them through, and be able to visually QC as well and validate where everything is. So excuse the internet, it might be a bit slow in refreshing the map layer, but that puts it into space and you can actually see where you're at. So what I'll essentially try to do now is to collect some samples and then bring them back offline, and then we can visually validate and make sure that they're in the database. So what a DBA would do, the database administrator would have designed the tasks, defined what tasks can be available offline, so that any user who's been given access to the offline capability will be able to take it offline. In my example, I'll bring in TeamViewer, which is the app that we're using to obviously showcase the screen of my phone. So to connect to the app, at the moment it's a prototype. It's out there being tested by some of our customers who signed up to be actively involved in the whole process. So it's pushed out by test flight, and it creates an app which is, I guess, on the third row, second to right, next to TeamViewer. It's got the A little icon arena. So to log into it, you simply click on it, and it'll take you to the next window where you enter your credentials, which would be your server details, similar to what I had in the backend there. It's a server in the cloud here in North America. So I'm connecting to the same server using the same credentials. So in your case, you probably would have a server on-premise using Arena, directly connecting to it, downloading it, syncing it to your phone. So I'll sign in there and go through the whole process. So it's logging in, retrieving the workspaces, and it's showing me what I do have access to. So if I want to take it offline, what I'll do is I'll just switch the radio button over, and it will retrieve and download my campaign, my tasks, and any validation data that I have set up or my database administrator set up. So I'm working as a geologist, I'm about to leave, that's what I would have done, and then from here I can actually even switch off my phone, put it in my pocket, drive to the point location where I'm going to collect samples. So once I get there, this is actually now working offline. So what I need to do is I can click to open up my stream samples. It opens up the interface that has been designed by my database administrator. So as you can see there, there's a list of fields that we want to be collecting. You can see the layout as well. We have some numeric fields. We have some radio buttons for fields with lower, smaller peak lists to ease in the data entry interface in a mobile device. So we're trying to optimize it so that it's quick and easy for the users out in the field to capture the data and move forward. I'll just jump onto the samples tab there. The sample tab will show you, when it opens up, it'll show you the list of the samples that we have in the offline interface right now. In case you wanted to verify and QC and also see what you brought out offline. So there is an option, or there will be an option to allow the database administrator to define what samples you want to take offline, if there's any, or you just want to take out an offline task that's empty because you're going to collect new samples. If you wanted to modify any data that you've just collected, you simply click on it and go back to the data entry tab, and it focuses on that sample, and you can update it and change it. Tasks that you haven't just collected, you will not be able to edit them, and it provides some form of security to ensure that you're not updating someone else's work because they belong to someone else, essentially. And the last tab that we have up there is a settings tab. The settings tab for now allows you to define, as you can see, the standard frequency. So after every three samples, you want to insert a standard. Duplicate frequency has been set up to 5. And you can also define the GPS accuracy threshold. At the moment, it's using the GPS triangulation coordinates from your phone to determine and pick up the GPS coordinates. So that's a quick walkthrough of the interface. Why don't we do some sample captures? I'll go to Insight because I picked up a sample before. And I'll walk you through some of the business rules as well that have been set up in here. So I'll start off 3000 series sample. You'll notice my keyboard as well is numeric. My DBA wants sample IDs to be numeric. If he defined the business rule that they're alphanumeric, I would have an alphanumeric keyboard as well. And the error that was showing there is the sample ID must contain 8 digits. So without 8 digits, I'll not be able to accept it into the database. It gives me an error. And it's also showing some of the other different errors that haven't been fulfilled. So I can close that, go in and enter my samples, scroll down, click on get position, and it picks up the coordinates. And it gives me a bit of an error there, which is obviously not ideal in our situation. But it shows you the accuracy that's been captured. There's also this small text that you can see under the elevation field there, the Z field, that gives you the accuracy. And it allows you to probably try it again, check it, tweak it, test it. And the plan is in the future we want to be able to potentially connect to a GPS device of higher accuracy. So potentially through Bluetooth, you'll be able to have better GPS coordinates captured. And then some of the information there is predefined. It has the ability to remember previously entered values. So you have your sampler. You can change that to, that's how the pick list would look like. You can pick someone else's name there. You can change your regolith type if you had any. Some validation has been set. You can see the color intensity. I cannot modify that until I pick a color. So once I pick a color, we'll go brown. And then I can add a few more details there. And then one cool thing that I picked up as I was testing it is, if you had comments, you're out in the field, you have a mobile phone, you can use some of the other cool features that come with it. For example, I can use the mic here and dictate my notes into the comment field. Testing comment. So that's just a quick example. I click on accept, and the samples go in. Sorry? You have a picture? No, unfortunately, not at this phase. Yeah. So I'll just collect a few samples, quickly just enter the required fields so that I can show you some of the other features that are there. Oh. So it must be conflicting with some samples that already exist. Okay, we've got 3,000 samples. So let's try the 4,000 series samples. And it's been optimized as it's remembering previous row values. It's allowing you to do quick data entry and only modify the different changing requirements that you pick up from a new sample. So, the assumption now is I'm walking, I've seen a new rock of interest, I've picked it up, captured the coordinates, accepted into the database. And then I've entered 3 samples. Standard is required. It picks up the right information there. I've got a pick list to pick up the standard ID. I can even start typing it in there if I had a really long list so that it can filter down to maybe what I have of interest. So it's allowing good data entry and including quickening the process, the ability to quicken the whole process. So once you've been collecting all the data sets and you're ready for it to go back into the main database, what you would do is obviously you drive back to site, to your office, you're back onto your network, your phone's connected to your database, and what you do is you go back to the Surface Sample tab, and you'll notice at the bottom there we do have the sync button. So there's sync and export to file. So sync is what you want to click, and as soon as I click that button there, it's synchronizing, going back to the main database. So now that we're back on the main database, the data is up there, we are happy. There's two things that I can do. I can still continue collecting data, or I can log out of the screen. And essentially what that does is it deletes the database that I have locally on my phone. So what I'll quickly show you now is when we are back online. So we've come back online. The database has been synced onto the cloud, onto the main database. And if we went into, say, the grid example here, and say I typed in the 4,000 series samples, I can now see them there. These are the 4 samples that I created, including the standard information and any other attributes. And yep, that's it. Any questions, any comments? Yep. At the moment, we cannot. I guess the question is, can you take two sample projects offline, and can you enter interval data? So this phase will allow you to take 2 projects offline. Yep. But unfortunately, it's really focused to just surface sample collection. It will not allow you to take interval data. So interval data is the second phase of the data capture, I guess, project that we're working on, which we're targeting towards the end of this year for the release. Yeah, there's a prototype out at the moment with a customer who's testing that out. Thanks.
Is there a way to report what synchronizations happened?
Yes. So if I quickly go back to my mobile phone screen and I jump into So I've just gone into the settings tab right there on the little hamburger on your top left. And there's 2 settings options that we have here. We do have the language setting and there's the logs. So it's keeping track of all the logs, including all the errors, the synchronizations that have occurred.